Hey, what's up, guys? Elvis here, and today we'll be building something very spectacular. We'll be building a project screen where we can see the list of all our projects in different views: a grid view, list view, Kanban view, or a gallery view. We can also see some metrics at the top here, and we have some buttons to navigate us to different part of the screen. And you'll see how I'll be able to build this in Microsoft Power Apps. So let's dive in. Alright, so we already have the dashboard screen. Working, and you can see that this is done with Microsoft Power Apps. You can see the dashboard, header, the welcome banner, just like what we saw. Welcome banner, some metrics here, dashboard, team performance here, and some tasks, pending tasks. And this is fully responsive. The navbar, once I click on this, I can see the navbar to the left here. So when I run the app, I can see this on the desktop view. This is basically how it will be looking on a large screen. Then I can toggle this over to an iPad, and you can see everything adjusts the way it should. If I move this over to a mobile screen, you can see even if you tilt the your mobile phone horizontally, is that horizontally? Yeah, it still looks nice. We can look at this on different. This is an iPhone screen. We can look at this on a. I think we have Samsung screens here. So, anyone, I can tilt this vertically, and you can see it's still looking very nice. No item is budging out of the screens. And you can see this was initially laid out horizontally, the matrix, but now on a mobile view it's stacked vertically. So all this is done with the use of containers, and it's super helpful. And if you notice also, the visuals, the texts are also dynamic. They're large on big screens and smaller on smaller screens or mobile screens. So, and I can also click on this to see my navbar. And these buttons initially were with text, but when they are mobile screen, they are reduced with just the icons. So I'll be walking you through how we can build the next page, which is the projects page. So let's go forward. I love building my apps in the components pane and not on the main screen. I just found out that it's a good practice for me, and it helps me focus on one section or item at a time. And once you have your designs prepared you can see I have different card views of different or templates or sections. The navbar is on its own component. So just like I've designed this in different code snippets. So if you have worked with React, you see how you design different components on different files. Then at the end of the day, you bring everything into the main one when you're rendering. But in this case, since we have different components on different areas, then on the main screen we just lay things out and ensure they are mobile responsive. You can see the cards, the matrix here, and another area for the lower section. Okay, so let's get started with building the component for the projects page. So for my projects page, so it's a good practice to make sure or to ensure that you divide it into sections and you try to understand each layer. So every website is structured. There are different sections, different cards area. So the best way to design your apps is to break it down into cards, break it down into sections. That helps you to focus on one area at a time. You can see if I'm going to design this, I'll break this down into the header area, the sub header. Then I have my metrics area. I have my action buttons for my filters, and at the lower part of the screen I have my display, just another section. And these are literally just buttons that when you click on them, it toggles the visibility of the respective views here. Okay, so I might end up creating 4 components, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, for my views. And the number of components you create is it's according to preference and what works best for you. I can get started with creating 4, and I could decide, oh, let me make it 3, because it makes it easier for me to make it mobile responsive and all that. So let's get going. So right here, I think I have my subheader prepared already. I have my subheader design here. I have some components I have like I've designed earlier. I'll be using those, but I'll also be designing the ones I don't have. So since I have the subheader separate, that's looking cool already. I will duplicate the design I have for my dashboard for the metrics and redesign it and make little adjustments for this metrics view. So I'll get started with that. I'll go over to my summary cards, which is for the dashboard. I'll right click on that, then click on duplicate. Let me blow up the zoom level a little bit so it looks closer. The design is looking very much similar to what we have on the dashboard. Can you see we have an extra icon and metric and some data here, but for this we only have the icon to the right, and that other data is off, and these guys remain same except for the text and indications. So what I'll do, I think for this one, I'll first of all rename it. I love renaming it according to where the screen would be. So this will be on the project screen, comp project. So COMP stands for component, means that is a component project. Then I'll also call this summary cards. Then I'll go ahead and delete this container because we don't need it at this point. So it's what happens when I delete. This is just a glitch from the Power App Studio. I will just go to a different view, different component, then come back, and that appears properly. Then this has to be at the right hand side of this. So what I would do, I would okay, I have all of the items. So this is the parents, this is the parent container with the gallery, and this is the container with having all the other items stacked. So I'll change this to a an horizontal container, so things are laid out, you know, vertically as this, and horizontally. I'll right click on this and reorder to the right for the image or the icon. Yeah, it's going off the screen, and that's because the width of these guys, of this one, is it's not flexible. You can see it's fixed. It's a fixed width to make it flexible and dynamic, because that's one of the main benefits of containers. And when you're making use of containers, you can make the width of your items, these 2 items, dynamic, such that when it's reducing or changing the size, what happens is the child items responds to that adjustment. So I'll select this and go over to here and turn on the flexible width. Yeah, it's still looking ugly, but you can see the other one is showing up. So I turn on flexible width, and the fill portions is 1. So the fill portions determine how wide or how many % of the parents it's going to take. For example, since I have 2 items here, just to show you how fill portions worked, you can see each of them is taking 1 of 2, so each of them is sharing the entire parent width as 50% each. So but I don't want that. I want this to have a fill portion, but for the icon I don't want it to be dynamic. I want that width to be fixed but smaller. So I'll turn off the flexible width and just adjust the width to 4. Yes, and it's looking it's not looking nice yet as I want. So what I'll do, I can see the items are stretching to the height of the parents, but no, I want them to respond to their fixed height. So I'll select the parents here. When I click on this, you can see this is the settings that makes it, you know, stretch to the heights. I'll bring this down, and voila, it's working. So you can see it's looking good already. Let's just make some little fine tuning if there is any. I can see this image is still budging out. I can't even see the boundary of the other end. So let me check the gap between both of them. I can see the gap here is 30. So the gap is like the spacing in between the items. So I'll take that to a variable I have here, which is 15, and it's still looking outside. I don't think do I really need the gap? For now I'll take out the gap. I'll take out the gap to see if that helps. This is and one thing I love to do is to take out the flexible or the minimum height and width when I'm working, except I need that. Okay, so first I take that out. I'm stretching, and okay, now I can see the boundaries. So taking out the gap helped, and I don't need gap for that area. I still have some extra containers inside of here. I don't really think I need these extra containers. I love using the minimum number of controls because too many amount of controls, reduces the speed time of your app. So what's the width of this? I made it 40, right? So you know what? I'm just going to take out this container. I will click on remove container. Yeah, now it's looking super big. I'll reduce the width to 40. And I think that's reasonable. You can see it's looking rectangular. I want it to be a square, so the height I would say be the pair. I want the height to be same as the width. So what I would say is self dot width. So this will respond. We take the equal width of the. This would have the value of the width as well. So I think it's looking nice already. And I think that's just what we want. It's looking good. That's all we need for the metrics page, for the metrics view for the project screen. Now let's go over to the next one. We should be working on this guy and this guy. So I'll be putting these two on the same component. Okay, so I'll be having a container that would have two areas, this filter aspect and this bottom here. And another thing I need to also consider, so before you jump into designing, try to see the end from the beginning. Okay, I'm building this not just for desktop screens, I'm also going to do this for mobile screens. So for this one, for example, with my content, how do I make this responsive if I put everything on a single component or container? Will this default to one column layout or two when I go into a mobile screen? So I'm just saying this just before you jump into designing, or maybe when you're done with each steps, when you're trying to do another steps, try to think ahead. Okay, what would be the stopper on the way? I can see this, for example, this is this Kanban view looks, so this is a 4-column layout. I believe it's going to be a 1-column layout when I toggle to a mobile view. And look at this here, I can click on this and it becomes dynamic for the width. That's pretty cool. Yeah. And so let me just hit my Ctrl+Shift+I and see how it looks on my mobile view. So I'm not really enjoying the mobile view because some things are off, but we'll make our own better. That's why we are developers. So I can see that there's some excessive padding. I don't really like having the navbar showing because it takes some extra space. So that's why you can see on my design I took off the navbar, except you click on this icon, then it pulls it up. Because if the navbar, the closed navbar, if it's showing up, it takes some extra padding here, and when I go on to mobile view, it's looking very small. So I can see everything gets stacked here now. And now I think what happens here is you can scroll. Okay, you can scroll like this to see other projects. Yeah, we could also do ours such that it gets stacked vertically for each section. I've already done this. I already have the functionality for making my cards stacked when I go on mobile view. I'll just show you how I achieved that before we go over to the next one. So if you see, this is my component for my cards. When I check my width, it's just taking the width of the app. Okay, then so since it's the width of the app, if your app is like 375 on a mobile view, the components will dynamically respond to that. Then now what happens because let's say for example I reduced the width to 375 here for a mobile view, 375, or it could be more than that a little bit slightly. You can see the gallery is not responding because this cards are inside of a gallery, which makes it easy for me to design, and it's not responding to this. So how am I making it swap that design to a 1-column layout? Because currently it's a 4-column, it's in 4 columns. So how do I make it 1 column when I go on a smaller screen? So I'll go over here to my let me check my width. The width of the gallery is also dynamic. I will check the wrap. You can see this wrap is the feature that determines how many column layouts your gallery will be. And just to let you know, this is a horizontal gallery, so sometimes it's difficult for you to know what kind of gallery you're working on because both of the galleries can change their number of layouts or column layouts. So what I do I'll just click on my gallery, come over to the properties pane, then select the layout here, you can see these items are looking like they're in a vertical manner. Yeah, but if it's the other type of container, they'll be, you know, stacked in rows. Yeah, so so that's one thing I did. So what I'm doing here, I have a variable in my on start, which I'll be posting the list of all the variables I'm using on this app. I'm saying if fx device mode dot desktop mode, so if it's the value is greater than 800 or 1000, which shows that it's already going to a, you know, desktop size. If it's equal to this, just return true or false. So this is the desktop mode, then it will return a 1 column layout, so just one, you know, this is an horizontal container, so it just returns a row. Then if not, it changes it into, you know, 4, it stacks it into 4 areas. Yeah, and let's say I change this into 4, it still won't be looking nice because the height is, you know, we've not also adjusted the height. So that's what happens. So this variable will switch to false when it's on mobile screen, and this value will be 4. Okay, then the last area of the trick here is the height. You can see also I have the same variable that checks if it's on a desktop or a mobile mode. Then if it's on a desktop mode, the height is 240, which currently it's on a desktop mode, it's smaller. But if not, it changes to 800. So let's make this 800, and we can see it blows up that height. Okay, that's why it's become stacked. Then the last area here is the template size. You can see it's not expanding as we want it to be. So if I check the gallery's template size, I also have the variable here too that checks if this is on a desktop mode, you know, counts the number of items. Just give me something, because what templates represent in a gallery is that the distance or the width of each line, okay, of a particular, you know, item in a cell, like each cell. If you worked with Excel, so what will be the width, what will be the distance, you know, how far should it spread out? So since I want something dynamic, okay, I just said, okay, I want the entire width of the gallery divided by the number of counts. So since it's, so if the gallery is like 12 and I have 4 items, so each of them will take 3, which will be equal for each. Then I'm saying if I'm on mobile mode here, I want it to just give me the parent.width, which is the width of the entire component here. So that's why if I change this to width, and take notes, I don't know, some of you might be new to Power Apps, so if you're trying to add a function behind it, if I hit on tab, what happens, it erases the existing or the function after it. So if I hit on tab, it's, you know, erases the if statement. So what I do to fix that error, you add a space first, then you can go ahead and add your new function, and if you hit on the space bar or the tab key, it doesn't affect what is existing there. And I'm using parent.width, and I'm using double slashes to forward slashes to make comments. So comments are just texts for you that acts like a reminder for, you know, what that particular function is doing, and you use double slashes to do that. And that code after those slashes would not work. It's just there for you to revert, or, you know, just for information purpose. And now I've made it parent.width, and you see it's looking nice now. So I'll revert my changes so it's dynamic on different screen. What else is remaining? I take my wrap key. Yeah, cool. Then it should be back to normal, hopefully. This is the last one. So cool. So that's how I was able to obtain that. So now let's move on with the next phase or the next area. Now let's go ahead with designing the cards. Let's go ahead and design this bottom section here, which has these layouts and the, you know, the different views. It's really cool, right? So let's see how we can get that to work. Let's create, I have, so just for the sake of someone that has never joined before, so let's create the components from scratch. I'll make the width to be app.width, which will take the entire width of the same width as the size of the screen. Then the height, I also make it app.height because I want it to be big. .height. Okay, so whenever you're working with screens or components, since I'm going to be using a container to make this responsive, I don't just start plugging things out. I like to design the layouts. Okay, so I'll plug in, like here I'm going to be having 2 layouts, 1 and 2, a smaller section and a wider section. So I'll come over here to say insert. I'll insert a container. I'll use a vertical container because I want things to be stacked. I'll make the x and y 0 0. Okay, then the width would be parent.width. Parent means the preceding control. So you can see down here, I mean, my container, my component is before it, so my component is the parent of this current container that is being selected. And you can also see it here on the tree view, the container is inside of the component. So I'll also adjust the height here, then parent.height. I can't type because you guys are watching me. Just a joke. Okay, so now that that's there, I would insert another container, but now this container would be an horizontal container that is for the cards. No, not the cards, that is for the action items and drop downs and so on. And I would turn off, you can see the height is taking the entire space of the parent. So like I always say, take out the minimum height and width unless you need it for whatever you need it for. Take out that, and I will try to fix the height. Set a fixed height 200. I'll make it 40, but you won't see any changes. You won't see any changes, and that's because the flexible height is turned on. So the flexible height overrides the normal height. So I'll turn off the flexible height and it should respond. I think that is too small, so I'll make that like 90. Okay, that's good for now. I'll go ahead and insert the next container. I can make a copy of this, so I'll copy this, select the one at the top, which is the parent, then paste. Then I don't need to take out the minimum height and width for this because I did that for the earlier copy. Now I want this to stretch to take up the remaining available spaces, so I'll just turn on the flexible height. Yeah, and so let's get on with designing every other thing. So I would also insert 2 containers here. Should I? Yeah, I want to insert 2 containers here. So one will hold this and the other will hold this, and that's because when I'm on mobile view, I want this area to span to the right hand side and this area to span to the left. So like I said, always think ahead. So I'll go to insert and I would say container. I could also duplicate this. So since I want to make a copy of this and I want it to be inside of it, when I select, I can just do Ctrl C and Ctrl V, and that will be pasted inside of it, as you can see. I will make another copy for the one on the right, so I'll copy again, then I'll select the parent and paste, and that should appear to the right. I'll select the parent and you can see everything is aligned to the left. That's why you can see both containers are tilting towards the left. I'll stretch it apart. Okay, and now you can see the two, and this is the gap between. I would select both of them and I would turn on flexible width, and there should be no spacing, and they are having equal spaces because one is taking one of the 2 spaces available. Okay, so let's go on with, we can now start adding our controls now. Okay, so you can see when your layout is prepared, it's easy for you to know where to place items on your screen. So I'll go here and I'll say insert text box. I think there's a text box there, text input or text box, anyone. I will insert a icon, a filter icon. You can say filter. I would also insert a drop down. Then that's all for the first side. Let's make necessary changes. So I would like to add a padding to the left of 10, and yeah, I think that's too small, and default value, and you can see everything is leaning towards the top. I'll just bring them down by selecting this guy here, and they are centered as they should. Then let me zoom in. Then I need a placeholder here for the text. Say search projects. Then dots. Then I'll put a search stuff to the left. I want the field to be white. Yes, and we might need a border, so I can say solid 1. Then the color, which I can also pick here, border color would be, so I can say I have a variable for a gray color. You can put in the gray color, but I have one for fx colors. Come on, man. Fx colors dot oh, okay, that's perfect. So, and let's see, I have my filter here, which is super large. First I'll make the width 32, and I'll make the height self dot width. Okay, and for this, I think the width is super, like, too wide, so I'll reduce that to something like this, 170. Yeah, just something minimal. Okay, and I have my filter here. I'll give my filter icon some padding, or from, I can still reduce the width to something like 28. So I think I have a variable for my icon, so I can say fx device mode dot icon width. So this is a dynamic width for both. Yeah, you can see, so it's looking better. And I don't know if I give paddings to my distance. I can say fx device mode dot padding, icon padding, menu icon padding, and that's like how many? 5. So I don't want to have to use this variable, in too many places, but I need it on the right, left, and top other areas of the padding. So all I can do is to use the self keyword, then say dots, and refer to the top padding here, and it uses that value on this path. It locks on to the same value, and I can use that everywhere, and it's looking perfect now. Cool. Now let's see the last part. I also don't want this width to be responsive, and I need it to be like smaller, so I can just make that one 70, then 70, or make it 100. And I think the items I have there are, so I'll go over to items. So the items right now, I'll hold down my alt key, then select the drop down, because I'm able to action items when I hold down my alt key, then make selections. Okay, now I can see the items I have there, 1, 2, 3, which is coming from here. I will change these guys here to, next would be review. Okay, and what else? Completed, that should be the last one. Completed, that should be the last one. And now when I make selections, I'm able to see all the items. That's cool. Just so you know, I'm making use of the latest, or I'm making use of modern controls in Power Apps. So just in case you're not familiar with that, there are 2 types of controls in Power Apps. So when Power Apps was coming up, there used to be the defaults or classic, the default controls, which are also called classic controls. But recently, in a few years back, or I think for a year or 2 now, we have the new or modern controls, and you can activate. So by default, when you trying to create a new app, it doesn't comes up until you go over here to the settings pane, go to updates, and you can see right here modern controls and themes. You have to turn it on, and that will give you access to cool looking controls as this. So just take note of that. Then my back here, my in progress is working. So all of these are looking nice now, and everything is aligned to the left. If I need them to be aligned to the center, all I need to come to do is to select the container housing all the icons and controls. I can set it here to the center, right, and to the left. And this is really why I love containers. All right, let's do the buttons now. So you can see these buttons are, to do these buttons, I wouldn't just yeah. Then I think one final thing here is that there are the gaps here isn't enough. You can see we have like, so I'm going to add some extra gap here. Let me say I can give it a gap in between the controls of 10. Yeah, I think 10 is enough, but I have fx default. I like using my variables so that I can easily manage my app. Cool. which has a value of 10. So to create the buttons for this, I have to take note of the functionality. If you look at when I click on a separate button, it takes on the color of the previous one. It makes it like active and all that. So if I, by default, if I plug in 4 buttons, the fill doesn't just change, okay, because they are not connected. So the best way to go about this is using gallery. So this is what I'm talking about. When I plug in a button here, for example, and I duplicate this button into like 3 places, and if I make the both of these the fill to be transparent, now this is the active button. So from what we are seeing there, when I click on the next one, nothing changes. It doesn't look like this is the selected button now. So the best way to do this is making use of galleries. So I'll go over here and insert a horizontal gallery, okay, because the buttons will just be stacked. Yeah, I want the buttons to be stacked horizontally. And I think I'm having 4 items, but I'll work on the items in a bit. So you can see I inserted a gallery in this container, and the height is outrageous. I'll take out first the minimum height and width because I don't need it in this use case. And I'll make sure that flexible width is turned on and this is stretch time. That's perfect. So now I will click on the pencil icon here, which is the edit icon, to insert items. I will insert a button. I'll just insert a button in that, and it's looking like it's overlapping. That's because the template size of the gallery is too small. So I'll go ahead and increase that to like 60, and now the buttons should be more spaced. I'll increase that to 150 to see how it looks. Okay, now it's looking better. And you can see some items inside of the gallery by default, so I'll just hold down my control key, select them, and then hit the delete key to delete them. Let me go ahead and try to center the button and make it look, you know, nice in the gallery. So we can start working on this. So what we'll do is that, because first we want to make sure that whatever is being selected has the primary fill and the rest are just blanks, you know. So I'll come over here to the type, because this is the property that changes the fill style. So we have outline, you can see it's changing here, and we have primary, and we have other types. So I'm making use of the outline and the primary. So what I'll just do here is to say if fx device mode dot desktop mode, okay, which will return true or false if the screen size is less than 800 or otherwise. So if it's equal to desktop mode, which is, oh no, that's wrong. So what I'll say is if this item dot is selected, so any item that is selected on the gallery or any button that is selected in that gallery, what will happen is I want to have the primary design, else I want to have that of the outline. Can I close that? Okay, I'm having an error here. I'll take out the extra comma here, then that should look nice. And now you can see, oh, so whatever is selected takes on, I don't think it's working the way I want it to do. Oh my gosh, what did I do? So I'll say if this item dot is selected, I want the primary, else I want the outline. Then by doing that, it works great now, as you can see. Then let's now make it look better. I would like the template size to be dynamic, okay? So the template size, I would say the gallery itself, okay, dot all items or dot width. Take the width of the gallery and I'll divide that by the gallery dot all items counts, and that would give me the right width or distance for, like, it shares it into same equal number of partitions, just like we have fill portions. So it shares it into the same number of fill portions for each buttons, and it's looking better now. And doing it this way is good because it's based on the width of the gallery. So even if the width of the gallery is reducing, it also reduces, it also adjusts the template size and make sure that things doesn't break. Then for the buttons, the X here, I will make that 15. Yeah, I don't really think it matters, but I want it to be more on the right hand side because we are going to be reducing, you know, the screen and all that. So let's say width here of the X property of the button, the X will be parent dot, we're using template width because we're in the gallery, minus self dot width. Then I'll just take out some 15 pixels padding. Then that should be looking good now. Then I also want to work on the width. Well, not yet. Now I'll go ahead to prepare the collection so that I can have the right text and icons on the buttons. So I'll go over here, select the gallery, go over here to the items property of the gallery. What we have here is a custom sample, so I'll just plug in a table here. Then I'll do each record. So now I can say grid. So I'll plug in a title for the button or text, just a text. This will be grid. Then I can say icon, and the icon would be I'll just say grid 2. So the way I can get the icon of a button is by, let me select the button. I'll select the button, then choose an icon. Then when I click on the property name here, I can see the value here, add. So let's do this. So the icon would be in string, and I'll just say add. Okay, just double quotes is enough. So I think this is all I need. I need to wrap this in text too, which is in double quotes as well. Plug in a comma. Then I'll make copies by just saying Ctrl C. I don't need to highlight the entire row, and I'll paste 4 times, Ctrl V, and it gets added for me. This would be a list. This would be a Kanban. This would be also be a Kanban and a gallery. So for the gallery below, I'll make use of camera, and this I'll make use of this. Take out double quotes. So now all I need to do on my icon for the button, I'll just say this item dot icon. Then everything should look nice. I don't think I'm getting the right name for the grid. Let's search for grid. So that is termed grid dots. Okay. So I'll come over here and say grid dots. Then now when I come here on my icons of my button, I can say this item dots icon, and now it's looking dynamic. You can see how I achieved this. Okay, now so I think the template size is too wide because the buttons needs to be at least closer to each other. But let's pick up from here in the next video.